Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another coffee with Tracy and Francesca. Again, we're joined
Good morning. I'm sorry, as I told you, I was on a street and I am not in my house. I asked some people to help me and because I need to drink a coffee with you. So I don't know where I am, but they give me some coffee.
Well,
so
we're glad that you're with us and you have a coffee.
Yes. And thank you, Prof, to be here. Now, since today you are my prof. And I invite you both because you have to convince me that online ABBA event is beautiful and I should attend it because I don't trust. So convince me, please, that I should.
Well, I started to convince you last week when we had our coffee, but you seem to have misplaced your computer, and therefore we're not quite sure if that conversation and that coffee will ever come to our audience.
Okay, so we can have a new one.
Okay.
The prof.
Well, hi, Penelope.
I have company today. This is my granddaughter, Penelope. Say hello.
Hi. Hey, did you see Tulia? That's Francesca's daughter.
There's Tulia. You see her? She's sleeping. Maybe one day they can play together.
I hope. Next year when you will come.
Yeah, I hope so.
And so, should I attend or not ABBA online?
I think you should, because I learned a lot and had a wonderful time at ABBA online this year, but it is tricky because the time zones are in the eastern part of the US, so it's a 6-hour difference for you.
Yes, that's an important question, but I feel, as I told you last time, and I want to listen also your professor opinion, is that since science coming in the world, there are in vivo conferences because science to grow up need maybe physical to be physically near someone or not. Is it online possible to grow up, to meet people, to share science?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think I'll start a little bit and then Shala, you can jump in. For us, I think there was a lot of anxiety about what would happen moving the conference from in person to the virtual platform. And in general, I was relatively happy with how things went. I think there were a lot of advantages, but I could see if you haven't attended an in-person conference with that group of people, that it may be hard to meet new people and to network in that virtual platform. What do you think, Shala?
I think a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
I think on one hand, I think with everything changing so rapidly, one of the things we have to do is just jump in. And I admire that ABAI just jumped in and tried it. And I think there were a lot of really good things about it. I think that it was wonderful to have access, and actually I like that it was asynchronous, that we could choose to be there in real time or we could come back later. At the same time, most of us, because of work, children, how much the conditions of the pandemic have affected our lives, it hasn't been as easy as I thought to go back and look at the clips because of other things going on.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you, though, that there's something really central about not only attending the talks to see, latest scientific advances, to see what thought leaders are, how they're viewing situations, how they're contextualizing things. All of that's really good with the talks. But a lot of what happens is in those in-between spaces where we respond to what happened, we talk about it. And I think being physically present allows, well, first of all, we're more fluent with that. So it allows more rapid shifting. It allows more moving between things and adjusting how we're thinking quickly. With the virtual environment, we're not fluent. And I think the ability to move across people and ideas feels very constrained. But I also feel as I'm going along that I'm I'm becoming better at figuring out how to find a community, how to generate new ideas. So I think part of the difficulty is also this is new and we're learning how to make it work. I actually would prefer in some ways in person because I'm more comfortable with it, and it feels like there's more depth to it actually. There's two other things and then I'll stop, but
I love to listen. You are convincing me, so go on, please.
Well, I think two other things that I think over time we have to think about. I think that even with the virtual environment, it feels like we have some work to do with inclusiveness. I know a lot of people, my students, my friends, colleagues that couldn't afford to go. And even for me, I'm, upper middle class, I have a good income, but I also have a lot of responsibilities, and the costs are difficult, especially if your work or whoever it is isn't supporting or can't support you. So I think there is an issue about access and how over time we look at access to our science and to developments in our science. Because if only people who have the economic means have access to the new information coming out, I think that limits how we evolve, because everybody's not having a voice in what happens, and I think that is a big issue. Yeah, those are some of the things I've been thinking about.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, now I feel competitive. So now, when you talk about inclusiveness and that is affluent, there is something that I can train myself to learn more, to be good on online conference. I have maybe if we are talking about inclusion, should we change the way we communicate during the conferences? So maybe it's my idea. I never come to Abai, and I feel that Abai is for really important, really scientists, really perfect professor, and that if I come, I say, oh, I will understand nothing. Should we change something to share and to put online science and our researches, or is it okay? What do you think?
Well, I think one thing that was kind of a recurring theme that bridges both of your ideas here is that we didn't have a closed caption or other sorts of ways that the online platform could reach audiences who take information in through different learning channels. Yet one thing that was really nice was the chat rooms that were accompanying each talk. And so while the talk was happening, the audience was participating in some ways, typing messages back to each other. There were many chats that people would upload articles that had been referenced, or share an expansion of an idea, or have some even a conversation about if there was agreement or disagreement with one of the points. And so I think in that way, the virtual platform allowed for some additional conversation or unpacking some of the ideas that were being shared that you can't do in person. I can't be like, oh, Francesca, it means blah, 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 blah. Or what do you think about that? Because it would be incredibly disruptive.
And then if I want to say something and to ask a question, maybe it's less anxious to text a chat respect to ask in front of a professor. I don't understand this.
Yeah.
So is it? But is only conferences, or also would we change our way to share science, or this is the way for?
I think actually you're onto something. And I think that anytime there's a crisis or a shock, it disrupts everything. And I think one of the things that a lot of people are talking about right now is that these portals are created for change, and that I think the way you're looking at it, I think is very interesting, and maybe we should step back and think, well, what are our goals? What do we want to have happen with these conferences? And maybe there are different things, and if we want science, I think Ruha Benjamin talks about it as the people science. If we want it to be for everyone, then maybe there are different ways of doing it that we haven't even conceptualized yet, that include, like what Tracy's talking about, some different channels, the talking, the presenting, the typing, the automatic translations, synchronous, asynchronous, more conversations around data or around cases where different people, different voices could be heard. I don't know how it would all look, but I think this is a really good opportunity to say, okay, it all exploded the way we were doing it, and now we have lots more variation. We have a lot of variation, so different things can be selected. But in that process, I think we have to be thinking deeply about our values. Like, what do we think is important? How do we want to help the world? How do we want to help the children and the families we serve? So in the process of disruption and all this variation, maybe thinking about, okay, what's going to guide us to select and also, and this is something I've learned a lot from Traci, is not to be afraid to try it. If it doesn't work, then we learn from it and we go on. In precision teaching, we call that as learning opportunities. Yes. So I think that while all of this is very different and sometimes frightening, and there are some very bad things happening, at the same time, all crises lead to opportunities. They lead to opportunities to think about what we value as human beings and then recreate.
Mm-hmm. That's because my question is, I'm not in university, I'm outside, so I'm not a scientist, and but I really love science. I don't want to show you that I don't like science. I think only we have to share science. But in Italy now we evaluate people if their publication, raga, andate via che non sento, there is my song. If their publication are how do I say cite when many people
the number of citations, like the impact of your articles. Mm-hmm.
Why we don't think about how many view on YouTube? Why don't we think that there is another way to measure our ability to share science for people, because it's an applied science. Now that's why I have this idea.
This is a conversation Shal and I have had in some other venues about how we might be able to bring science into different modalities, so that maybe there's peer-reviewed blogs or some other like some of the things that we're doing here that don't cost a fee. The cost of science is not just related to ABAI and other conventions, but it's also, excuse me, the folks are here to collect my recycling, but it's also related to access to journal articles. And so, if you don't have access to a subscription to the journal through a university library or something like that, you've seen it costs $40 to take one paper, and that's going to restrict who can access the science and who can benefit from that. Additionally, we communicate in different ways. So in a published printed or electronic journal article, we're using a lot of technical jargon. We're writing in a particular way, and that's not the only way we know how to communicate what it is that we do in our science, and it's not dependent upon me transmitting it or translating it, that everybody can access the information to improve their world.
My challenge, sorry, it's your turn.
No, I just wanted to add on to that a little bit. I think a point that you made, like thinking about our impact, that citations and peer review are very important to the scientific process, although I think that's something we should be constantly evaluating and seeing what is the way to build the most rigorous understanding of the world. I remember Ogden Lindsley used to have this idea that there would be an article and that the reviewers, nothing would be blind, but there would be public review of the information and people would learn how to evaluate that information. I actually think that's a very important thing with all areas of science, is that like the way we're informed about political systems as citizens, I think we should be informed about how science works to be able to at least have some level of being able to evaluate scientific process and information. So I think that's one thing. I think the other thing when we think about impact is that there are lots of different ways of impacting the world. And I think that one area that I look forward to being developed more and more in applied behavior analysis is social importance, and how we determine social importance and how we determine social importance both at individual level, like with the child we're working with their family and the family system, in their community, and also in society as a whole. That how we, like, is it through, how much exposure we have on YouTube or articles? Is it how much has changed? Is it how much better overall things are getting? Like, I think we haven't really developed those areas of our applied science very much. And I look forward to seeing how that is done, because measurement is important. We know that from science, but we have very few measures of if we're increasing well-being for individuals or societies. And if it's well-being for everyone, not just a few.
Girls, I am really happy. My brain is full of ideas, but they are closing my office because they are going. You know that someone in Italy is closing my office. I have no more Wi-Fi, and thank you very much to have this coffee. And Tracy, I love your prof. Could we share a little bit her, but not for not all, but a little bit?
I love having Shala here. If she can join us for several coffees, I would be thrilled to have that.
Yeah.
These conversations are inspiring in many ways. One, because we're thinking about different ideas, but also because it's an opportunity for us to rebuild, to build in a different way. And
I want to say thank you, really, but thank you from my heart. Really, thank you to both. And thank you to the man who is here with me. Bye.
Yeah, and thank you to everyone in your office today for letting you share the space.
Thank you.
Yes. Ciao.
They're closing me inside.
Okay. All right. Bye, Francesca.
Tracy, send me the registration.
Certo.